Update, brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300. Manx Radio's Update with Andy Wint.
Fast am I. Good evening. It's 5:30. This is Update for Monday, 26th of June, 2023 from Manx Radio. 30 minutes to look at the latest news on the Isle of Man. Background to that news and sport and business and Sea Watch and travel updates. And the newsmakers in person this evening. The Chief Minister says the economic strategy is working. Inspection reveals over a dozen concerns at the prison. Sort out the golf links wreck, says an MHK. Both basketball teams are optimistic of Island Games success. And watch out for horsefly bites, says the doctor. Oh, and the Gatwick flight showing on time.
Man Benham for all your business and legal needs.
First of all, at 29 minutes ahead of 6 o'clock, the Update News headlines. Fast am I, Chanel Soku.
Fast am I. The deaths of 3 prisoners at the Isle of Man prison are being investigated by the Prison and Probation Ombudsman. His Majesty's Chief Inspector of Prisons, which has today published a report on the Derby facility, says the Department of Home Affairs has contacted the body. People travelling from the Isle of Man with Logan Air have the opportunity to move their flights without charge due to the ongoing travel disruption at the airport. The airline says whilst it is working with Ronaldsway Airport to minimise the effect of the short-term closures, it understands customers have onward travel arrangements to make. And a public meeting about assisted dying will take place in Douglas tonight. Trevor Moore, the chair of My Death, My Decision, is due to speak at the Manx Legion Club from 7:30 p.m. In international news, the head of a militant group says his aim wasn't to overthrow the Russian government when his troops approached Moscow at the weekend. He's issued a statement saying he's ordered his mercenary forces to turn back because he didn't want to shed Russian blood. And inquests heard Nicola Bully could have started drowning within seconds of going into the river where her body was found. Experts say there's no evidence she was harmed before disappearing in January. And former Scotland manager Craig Brown has been described as a true legend following his death. He was the last coach to have led a men's team to World Cup qualification at France in '98. Those were your headlines. News at 6.
Man Benham. Contact us by phone, video call, email or face-to-face. We're happy to connect with you. Manx Radio Weather with Manx Glass and Glazing.
Goramaya, thank you, Chanel, from the Ronaldsway Met Office. No wind warning in operation for the North Irish Sea. State of sea is slight, and this evening dry with some weak sunshine in a moderate west. Comes southwesterly. Overnight minimums 14 degrees. For Jamert, Tuesday, a wet start, then a moderate southerly. Will dry everything up afternoon. Still dull with coastal mist and hill fog. Daylight maximum 18. Down to 14 through the night into Jacrane. For Wednesday, sporadic drizzle and rain on a moderate southwesterly, veering west or northwesterly. Drying up through the afternoon, and we're up to 19 top temperature on Wednesday. High water in just under an hour's time at 22 minutes past 6. Sunset 5 to 10. Low water 28 minutes before 1 a.m. Sunrise 13 minutes to 5. And high water 21 minutes past 6 tomorrow morning.
Visit the Manx Glass and Glazing website and see a range of products from windows to doors, mirrors to splashbacks. manxglass.com.
The Chief Minister insists there's evidence government's strategy to grow the Isle of Man's economy is proving to be working. Plans to grow the population, create new jobs and invest in infrastructure were published in July last year. Mr Cannon says government figures show there's been some success thus far.
I think the critical point is that one, I provide some transparency that yes, a number of actions are currently being undertaken, some of which are very clear in terms of the island infrastructure scheme, some of the DFE allocation allocation of spend is yet to be drawn down, but we'll give clarity on that. The more important thing is, are we actually driving the economy forward? And as I said in my answer, the best information that I have from Isle of Man statistics and the independent information that's been given is that we are over 650 jobs positive to when this administration started out. That similar number is reflected in the population growth, and if you take those as just simple standalone statistics alongside what we've targeted in our island plan for jobs growth and population, then I think we've got some foundations to say that it is proving to be a success. And of course, one has to factor in we've achieved that also alongside very strong economic headwinds of high inflation, global energy price significant fluctuations, and of course the general economic conditions. So, I think that we are setting out to achieve our objectives. We've already got good evidence in the first 18 months or so of this administration that we delivered on that. But I think the real proof of the pudding will come in the next 6 to 12 months when I deliver the annual report, which I intend to do in November, regarding the Economic Strategy Board and the Development Fund, and also by the time we get to the next budget in April 2024, we'll have greater insight.
14 areas of concern have been identified following an inspection of the Isle of Man prison by HM Chief Inspector of Prisons. The Department of Home Affairs has been told 6 of these should be treated as priorities which require immediate attention, and it's launched an action plan as a result. Leroy Bonnick is the prison governor. He told Manx Radio he accepts the findings that procedures to manage new prisoners were over-restrictive and not based on risk.
Perhaps we judged individuals and probably previous history, and we felt that we'd have to safeguard individuals. And again, I guess given that the deaths in custody we've had, we're conscious that we have to safeguard the individuals that are coming in our doors. So I think the reactive comment was they're saying that we perhaps should need a more risk that we can address individual cases rather than trying to perhaps say one size fits all.
And one of the specifics that they pointed out was the special accommodation, which they've said was used more often than we would expect for those often in crisis. It's described this as poor practice and inappropriate. Why were these special cells being used if effectively they deemed that they didn't need to be?
Well, that's their interpretation of it. Obviously, those special cells would give us, observations of individuals that were in crisis. Hence the reason they were put into those positions, so we could watch the individuals and safeguard them, on a more regular basis.
I mean, I think the accusation they almost make is that it was a little bit over the top.
Well, you can be criticised for being over the top, but certainly, when we're safeguarding individuals, it is a fine balance, and people always have their view of whether that's, too punitive or it's too over the top. But, ultimately, our job is to safeguard the individuals, and it's what we try to do. Obviously, now that has been highlighted, we've looked at how we can strike a fine balance in terms of safeguarding individuals that are in crisis and are self-harming.
Update. Brought to you by Simcox Advocates.
Both of the Isle of Man's basketball teams heading for this year's Island Games are feeling optimistic about their chances of success in Guernsey next month. Manx Radio spoke to the women's team captain Becky Dunn, and first from the men's team, Peter Basugu.
We're all looking forward to it an awful lot. Obviously, it's been quite a long layover from the 2019 Gibraltar Island Games, so we've all been really looking forward to this one. The preparation's been great, and all the boys are raring to go. I think we're quite a young team, which is good. We're quite athletic. We've got good legs to us, so we're quite happy to run the lanes and use that quite well. Shooting wise, we're pretty decent as well. We've got some really good shooters on the team, and so I think we're going to bring that to other teams and see how they fare with us. I think it lives up to the name that it's given with the friendly games. I think everyone who's there are great people, be able to have a conversation with anyone, which I think is absolutely amazing. And I think as well, obviously, to do something so great in such a small area and small time period, it's just incredible. And I think obviously going back to back and days where you're playing game after game, it's just a great feeling. It brings you together as a team.
It's kind of come round pretty quick, considering obviously with COVID we had it delayed. Suddenly it's upon us. Preparations have been going well. It was just before Gibraltar we entered into the men's league, senior men's league, because numbers had dwindled a little in terms of a women's league, to kind of give ourselves a game and to really push our game on, and it's been really good. They've welcomed us in. We've had some really tough games, but then over actually the last year we've also managed to take a few wins in that, which has meant that we've seen our progress as a team as well. So hopefully going into these games will be kind of where we want to be. The draw we've got is, a good group. There's some good teams coming in for the women's competition. We've pulled Guernsey, which is always going to be tough. We are hoping that we can, put up some good matches, maybe take 1 or 2 wins that'll then put us in contention to get a medal, whether that be kind of silver or bronze, but it's just all about, we're just going to take it game by game.
And MHK's call for the Manx government to do something about the wreck of a former hotel which has been left to fall into disrepair in his constituency. Plans for the redevelopment of Castletown golf links have been rejected at appeal. Fort Island Development Limited had wanted to build 40 apartments and a small hotel. Albury, Castletown and Maloo MHK Tim Glover says it remains a major blot on the landscape.
I mean, I've seen reaction to the decision, such as freedom to flounder and anything's better than the wreck there. Well, I don't accept that. I mean, the area is zoned for tourist-related development, and as well as environmental grounds, the decision cites concerns that this is more residential than tourist-related. The small hotel is part of the plan. It's feared may eventually fail and be converted to more departments. So those are the reasons why. But really, to my mind, the current standoff just can't continue.
What's the mood of constituents in your area to this? Because it is a very sensitive area.
It's a very beautiful area where this wreck of a former hotel is still there. My gut instinct is that, I will be wanting to see now action from DEFRA and Maloo commissioners, and I implore them to, at least now, order a demolition once the only right to challenge this latest decision. It's a petition of dolience to the High Court, and that has to come within the next 3 months. And once that's elapsed, I think in the best interest of everybody, and including most of the people of the island, who it's one of the most beautiful parts of the island, with this horrible falling down ruin in its place where it was once in its glory and pomp, it certainly isn't now. So I think whatever happens, the site needs to be cleared before any other decisions are made.
Sea-Watch with the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company.
Mothership Ben McCree departed Heysham at 26 minutes past 2. She'll be into Douglas in the next 20 minutes or so. Departing this evening at 7:45, arriving in Heysham at 11:30. Overnight departure, 2:15 back to Douglas for 6 tomorrow morning. High-speed craft Manannan left Douglas at 3 minutes past 3. She's on the link span just by the Liver building on the Pierhead in Liverpool, and will be departing this evening at 7:15 back to Douglas at 10 tonight. Tomorrow morning's departures, high-speed craft Manannan departs Douglas at 7 o'clock for Dublin, and the Ben McCree departs Douglas at 8:45 for Heysham.
Follow the Steam Packet on Twitter for the latest sailing information.
It's that time of year, a doctor's reminding people, and that could be you, to keep soothing creams and antihistamines readily available, as a number of people have already been bitten by the horsefly. The radio doctor from Manx Radio explains why some bites heal fast and others could need further treatment.
Well, most of us are fine with all this stuff, producing an inflamed, itchy lump, a wheal for a few days around the bite area. Others, though, have a really nasty reaction involving a huge algae-based wheal, which is very itchy, moving into actual cellulitis occasionally, spreading red, hot, swollen area, sometimes with systemic effects, fever, aches and pains, nausea. An initial allergy reaction is best served with topical mild steroid creams, such as hydrocortisone you can buy over the counter, or on prescription, of course. Perhaps add in some non-drowsy sort of antihistamines. Then too, for many in hot humid conditions, these are sometimes quite sedating despite being non-drowsy, so be aware if you're operating machinery, driving, etc. Occasional cases will obviously need oral antibiotics.
Manx Radio Business Briefing.
At 16 minutes before 6, the cruise giant Carnival's continued to recover from the lows of COVID-19 as it reported a net loss of $407 million for the second quarter. The company's authorities said that translated into a diluted loss per share of 32 US cents. However, its adjusted net loss stood at $395 million or 31 cents per share, surpassing the higher end of its March guidance of $425 million to $525 million loss. Additionally, its adjusted EBITDA for the quarter totaled $681 million, aligning with the March guidance range of $600 to $700 million. And to read a full daily market report, go to ramseycrookall.com. A landmark's moving. HSBC's moving from Canary Wharf in East London, possibly back to the City of London. The 20-year lease expires on HSBC's world headquarters at number 8 Canada Square in 2027. The move's part of plans to downsize its office space following the COVID-19 pandemic, as HSBC says it's now committed to flexible working. The bank's said to be negotiating a new lease on BT's former headquarters near St Paul's Cathedral. The proposed new office is at the Panorama St Paul's development and will be a lot smaller than the bank's current headquarters, which houses close to 8,000 staff over 45 stories.
The Stock Market Report. Brought to you by Ramsey Crookall.
UK and European stocks closed down. The US dollar rose to a 15-month high against the ruble. Oil paired early gains and gold climbed as geopolitical concerns surrounding Russia drew some investors to safe haven metal. The numbers from Ramsey Crookall at the close in London. The FTSE 100 was down 0.1% at 7,453. The DAX in Frankfurt closed down just over 0.1% in Frankfurt at 15,809. A short time ago in New York City, the Dow Jones Industrial down just over 0.1% at 33,676. The Nasdaq Tech Stocks Index again down just over 0.1% at 13,471. The S&P 500 in Chicago barely down 0.07% at 4,345. In the exchange markets, the British pound sterling trading at $1 27.2 cents, €1 16.5 cents, and 23 South African rand 73.1 cents. In commodities, gold's up 0.4% at $1,927 per troy ounce, and a barrel of Brent crude barely down 0.03% at $74.33.
You've got an investment plan?
Yeah, Mike set it up.
But don't you need loads of money to do that?
Not this one. It's called Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, and you pay in monthly as little as £100. So it's like saving regularly, really helping us invest in the future for a house, of the kids' education.
£100 a month? I could easily do that.
You should. The sooner you start, the better.
Invest in your future with as little as £100 a month. Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, the island's investment specialist for 75 years. Call 717171 or visit ramseycrookall.com. Licensed and regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
A UK Tory MP has withdrawn a question tabled in the House of Commons at Westminster to discuss the effectiveness of the Isle of Man government's response to COVID-19. Manx Radio contacted Daniel Kaczynski for comment when the question to the Secretary of State for Justice was put forward, but shortly afterwards it was withdrawn, meaning it no longer needed to be answered. Christian Jones sat down with the Isle of Man government Speaker of the House of Keys, Ewan Watterson, to ask if this was normal.
Ever since the Isle of Man was bought by the United Kingdom Crown in 1765, the first 100 years of that relationship was a rather colonial relationship. But ever since elections to the House of Keys in 1866, the democratic resurgence of the Isle of Man has been very much more to the fore, to the extent that it's well recognised now that we have full domestic autonomy in all that we do. We have an increasing role in international affairs as well now. So it is a far more mature relationship between the United Kingdom government and the government of the Isle of Man.
So realistically, what would it take for the Isle of Man to be placed back in the control of Westminster? Would that be something that's triggered by the Crown or something initiated by the UK government? How would that work?
I certainly don't think that it would be triggered by the Crown. I think if that the only realistic way of that happening would be if the Isle of Man wanted that to happen, rather than whether the UK government would want that to happen. There's not a lot of recent precedent about the UK legislating for the Isle of Man without our consent. So in realistic terms, the only way that this would be happening is if the people of the Isle of Man and of Tynwald actually wanted it. And I can't see that happening anytime soon.
And we know an MP tabled a question to look at the Manx government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. That's since been withdrawn. But what's your take on that, knowing UK Parliament would essentially be scrutinising the island's politics?
Well, I suspect, like any government, you keep a close eye on what your neighbours are doing. I know that the Cabinet Office in the Isle of Man will no doubt be keeping a close watch on what is going on in the United Kingdom as well. So, of course, we look over each other's shoulders, but I think as long as that doesn't extend to interference in each other's domestic affairs, that's part of that grown-up relationship that I talked about.
Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300. Manx Radio Sport.
Fast am I, Rob Pritchard?
Fast am I. Good evening. 2 Manx cyclists managed to secure podium finishes during the last 2 events of the 2023 British National Road Championships at the weekend. Matt Bostock took second place in the elite men's circuit race on Friday evening, beaten only by Ollie Wood, with Tim Shawman taking bronze. Meanwhile, fellow Ireland athlete Max Walker took his second top 3 finish of the event on Sunday by finishing third in the under-23 men's road race. It comes after the Trinity racing rider also claimed second spot in the under-23 men's time trial event last Wednesday. Elsewhere, after an unforgettable experience at the 2023 World Summer Games in Berlin, the Special Olympics Isle of Man team are beginning their journey home today and due to arrive back on Manx shores this evening. The closing ceremony for the event took place last night in the German capital. The squad even got the chance before that to enjoy a guided tour of the city ahead of the ceremony, after an event which has seen the Manx side take an impressive medal haul across last week. And in golf, Robert Noone and Kaylee Dawson have successfully defended their Isle of Man Championship titles for 2023 after the finals of the event this year were held at the weekend. In the finals held at Ramsey Golf Club yesterday, Noone of Mount Murray retained his top honour in the men's championship, beating Castletown's Gerald Bradley. Meanwhile, Dawson was able to overcome Ramsey's Tilly Davies to hold on to the women's championship silverware. Noone becomes the first player to win back-to-back men's championships in 14 years, since Castletown's Paul Lowy managed the feat in 2008 and 2009. Meanwhile, Kaylee's 2 wins in a row means the women's title has seen the Dawson name at the top of the standings for the last 4 seasons, with Leah Dawson having won in 2020 and Anna Dawson taking the title in 2021. Elsewhere, Anna Dawson managed to finish in the top 50 players after a positive campaign at the Czech Ladies Open on the Ladies European Tour at the weekend. Dawson finished on an overall score of 1 under par and managed a score of 71 on the third and final day of the competition yesterday.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Inbound at Ronaldsway, the 5:45 Loganair from Manchester is delayed for an hour till 7:15. The 8:10 Loganair from London City delayed until when, we don't know. 8:10 Loganair from Liverpool is showing on time inbound, and the 9:25 EasyJet from Gatwick at this moment is on time. Departing the 5 o'clock EasyJet to Bristol didn't get away until just gone 5:30. The 5:30 EasyJet to Liverpool's delayed until 5:45. Should be going around now. And then the 6 o'clock Loganair to Liverpool's delayed. The 9:05 EasyJet back to Gatwick showing on time. In Kirkmichael, temporary lights on the TT course south of Kirkmichael for substation work. East Quays closed between the House of Manana and the Road Bridge in Peel for work on the pavements. We've got some phased closures on the Peel to Kirkmichael Coast Road between Battery Lane in Peel and the White Strand. There are signs in place when it's happening. Temporary lights on the TT course at Glen Helen for tree felling, and also temporary lights on Cumberland Road, Ramsey for resurfacing. Ballacollister Road, Lax is closed between Cruddy Quill Road and Rensall Hill, and in Derby, the Ballymena Road's got phased closures for that water main replacement. Temporary lights on the Howe Road, Port St Mary for substation work. Temporary lights on Ballacameen Road, Douglas for resurfacing. Groudle Road's closed in Oncombe between Harbour Road and Fairway Close, and Packhorse Lane in Baldrines closed for resurfacing.
H&H Motorcycles.im for all your motorcycle requirements. Southgate Industrial Estate, opposite Quayside Tyres. Call 665646.
A public meeting about assisted dying is taking place in Douglas tonight. Trevor Moore, the chair of My Death, My Decisions, due to speak at the Manx Legion Club from 7:30 tonight. The details from Lewis Foster.
Mr. Moore has come from the UK on invitation from My Death, My Decisions Manx branch, which is chaired by Liberal Vannins Paul Weatherall. He was originally due to attend the island back in March, but his plane from London was turned back due to the fog. He's also due to address Tynwald members tomorrow. Mr. Moore says anyone is welcome tonight, whether they are for or against assisted dying.
It's not exclusively for people who support assisted dying, and we'd welcome people to come and have a dialogue, respectful dialogue about the topic. I will present for 20 minutes or so just the core issues that I think are there, put necessarily My Death, My Decision perspective on it. But we'd welcome people then talking about what they see as being the necessary safeguards and the eligibility criteria and so on, because I do think it's by having conversations rather than being diametrically opposed that one can ultimately end up with an acceptable middle ground.
So that's at the Manx Legion Club in Douglas at 7:30 tonight. Ramsey MHK, Dr. Alex Allinson, whose assisted dying bill will receive its first reading in the House of Keys tomorrow, is due to attend.
The Isle of Man in 30 minutes. Update on Manx Radio with Andy Wint.
Faster by proposed changes to employment legislation in the island relating to family leave rights, whistleblowing and 0 hours contracts are due to enter the legislative branches in the next Keys sitting, which is tomorrow the 27th. That story from Rhiann Evans.
In January 2023, the Department for Enterprise confirmed the intention to bring forward a broad range of reforms relating to each of these employment legislation matters, having received support during public consultation on them. The legislation being introduced into the branches includes the following proposed amendments. Starting with family leave rights, the new rights will include the right to time off work to accompany a partner to antenatal appointments, adoption appointments and to take care of dependents in emergencies, the right to shared parental leave and also the right to parental bereavement leave, which includes cases of miscarriage and stillbirth. Moving on to whistleblowing, and a number of changes to clarify and improve the law in relation to this will include the introduction of a public interest test, the introduction of vicarious liability to prevent detrimental treatment of whistleblowers by other employees on behalf of an employer, the removal of the requirement that a disclosure be made in good faith, provision to make clear that a protected disclosure has been made, power to make regulations to require prescribed persons to report on whistleblowing cases, and also power for interim relief. And finally, looking at 0 hours contracts, there'll be the introduction of the provision to make a right to a written statement of employment terms and conditions a day one right. A copy of the Employment Bill 2023 can be found on this story at manxradio.com.
That's it for Update Tonight, brought to you from the resources of Manx Radio's news department. Thanks to newsreader Chanel Suku, producer Rhiann Evans. Stick around for Phil Gorn and Agenda after the news at 6 o'clock, and I'll be back with another update tomorrow at 5:30.
WINT.